Guten Morgen zusammen auch
Good
von meiner
morning
Seite.
from my side as well.
Ich heiße Mark
As Dirk said, my name is Mark Blundell, and I'm really looking forward to bringing the message today. It's a great privilege for me to be able to do that. I want to talk about God being our rock.
And
that is a topic that has really been very important to me in the last weeks. And when I prepared this message, I really realized how God changed my prayer life. And I hope this will be the same for you. And right in the beginning, I want to say, no matter where you are, no matter where you're tuning in from, no matter how your weekend has been so far, I want to tell you, God is there wherever you are. And I think there is something that God wants to tell you today. I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear the word rock. When I hear rock, I think of Saxony and Switzerland. So here in the Saxony, Switzerland, we have a lot of cool rocks. So this is, for example, from this picture was from my home in England. It's called Black Rock, and then there's also the White Cliffs of Dover. So no matter what you think about when you associate, when you hear the word rock, you don't think of these little bitsy stones. You think really of these mighty, majestic rock. And this is what the Bible, or how the Bible describes God. And this is often referred to in the book of the Psalms. I want to read to you from David's psalm, and he writes this psalm after he became king. He looks back at his life, and he looks back at his life and says and recognizes, wow, I see how God freed me, how he rescued me. And he starts his psalm and says, the Lord is my rock, my fortress and my Savior. My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and my place of safety. He is my fortress. And as you see, he does not only just use the word rock, but there's quite a few other metaphors he's using here. And he's really excited about God, and he doesn't really know how to describe it. So he's using one description, one metaphor after another. And I think that rock is still the central description here. So God as a rock means it's a safe place.
Und hohes Gebirge ist seit langer Zeit ein gutes Ziel, wenn man sich verteidigen will.
High mountains, that has been a really good place to come at your enemies, because when you're higher than your enemies, you can really get at them. You can get at their head. You can shoot arrows at them. They have to fight climbing up the mountain or the rocks. And that's why still fortresses are built up on a high mountain on a rock. You see the enemy coming, and when the enemy is coming, you can run into the fortress and find safety. And that's the same way with God, and that's what David wants to tell us here. If you know the story of David, then you know that he had to really, literally flee into the mountains. He really had to flee and run away from Saul. And he tells us in this psalm here, not the mountains saved me, but my God was my mountain, he was my rock. I'm still alive because God rescued me, he saved me, and not because I found such a great hiding place.
Verlass dich auf Gott. Und du wirst nie enttäuscht sein, denn Gott ist wirklich ein starker Befreier, ist ein starker Gott,
really
und wir können uns wirklich auf ihn verlassen. Ist die perfekte Zuflucht in der Not. Und Gott ist sicher, weil sich nie ändert. Und ich meine wirklich nie. Gott ist derselbe gestern, heute und morgen. Wird nie schwach sein, wird nie müde sein, wird nie von etwas verunsichert sein, sondern bleibt immer stark. Und ich habe es immer wieder von Predigern gehört, das war Gott sich am 7. Tag der Schöpfung ausruhen musste, müssen wir uns erst recht ausruhen. Wir sagen ein bisschen so, ja, Gott war dann müde nach der ganzen Schöpfung und er musste sich ausruhen und wir müssen uns ausruhen nach unserer ganzen Arbeit.
No, we have to take a rest.
Wirklich was
so
Gutes
the Sabbath
Gott,
is really something
uns geschenkt hat. Es ist wirklich
a gift
für
from
uns,
God that is
aber die
for us.
Begründung stimmt einfach nicht. Gott war noch nie müde, er musste sich noch nie ausruhen.
The reasoning behind the Sabbath is not that God had to take a rest from his creation, because that's actually a wrong definition, because he has never been weary or weak.
Er ist der Schöpfer der Erde. Auch die entferntesten Länder hat er
what it
gemacht.
says in Isaiah 40:28 is, have you never heard, have you never understood, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of all the earth. He never grows weak or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding. So he's never weary or weak.
Ich habe vor
Just
einigen Monaten von meiner Frau ein sehr cooles Handy geschenkt bekommen.
So a few months ago,
und dieses Handy
I
hat
received
ein riesiges
a cell phone
und
from my wife as a gift, and this cell phone has a huge battery.
Ein paar Nachrichten geschrieben habe, ein
in
paar
the morning
Bilder
when
gemacht
I took
schaue ich auf mein Handy und
photos,
sehe, es ist immer noch auf 100%.
I sent a few messages
Was muss ich machen,
and
damit es
still
endlich
the battery
auf
still
99
has
geht?
100%.
Aber als ich
what do I have to do
darüber
until it
nachgedacht habe, hat meine
changes to
Frau zu mir
99%?
gesagt, naja, du hast es auch über dein erstes Handy gesagt. Das hatte auch so ein riesiges Akku.
You know what you remember
Grund,
what you said about your first
musste.
cell phone? It also had such a
Aber bei
huge
Gott ist es
battery.
völlig anders.
So just
Nachdem
remember how it went
Planeten,
with your first cell phone.
Tiere,
But
Menschen,
I want to tell you it's
Milliarden
different
von
with
Zellen
God.
erschaffen
So
hat, war seine Kraft immer noch auf 100%.
created millions of cells, millions of
wenn er das
animals,
10-mal
but his
gemacht hätte,
strength was
wäre
still at
seine Kraft
100%.
immer
And
noch auf
even if he would have
100%.
done the same
Er wird immer
way
auf
10
100%
times what he
bleiben.
did,
Er wird nie
he would have
einen
still
schwachen Moment haben. Er
been
wird
at
nie
100%.
zu
He will
müde
never
oder zu kraftlos
get
für
weary.
etwas
He will
sein.
never lose his strength.
Gott ist und er bleibt stark und
God
das
is
ist ein Grund, warum
and
wir uns
always
auf
will
ihn
be
verlassen
strong. And
können.
that's the reason we have to
Und ein
depend
anderer
on him.
Grund ist, weil
And another
nichts
reason is
ihm anhaben kann.
Nothing
Und ich möchte
can
jetzt
really
zurück
harm him.
zu diesem Bild von den weißen Klippen.
And I want to go back
Dover.
to this metaphor
Sieht
of
gut
the
aus.
cliffs of Dover.
Aber ihr könnt euch das vorstellen, wenn nicht. Nee, nochmal. Super, Dankeschön.
So these are the cliffs of Dover.
Sind der Wind und die Wellen gegen
For
diese
thousands of
Klippen
years, the
geschlagen.
waves have
Aber
crashed
sie
against
stehen
these
immer noch
cliffs,
erhaben
but they're still
und
standing
wirklich
there
felsenfest.
majestically and really
Und wenn ein
strong as a
Sturm
rock.
kommt,
And
macht
whenever there's
niemand
a
sich
storm,
Sorgen
no one
diese
is
Felsen,
worrying
ob sie es
about these
irgendwie
cliffs,
überleben.
whether they will survive.
Sondern wir machen uns viel mehr Sorgen um das, was dagegen geschlagen wird.
We're much
Wenn ein Schiff
more
dagegen geschlagen wird,
worrying about the
dann
things
ist das
that are being
Schiff
crashed
definitiv
against the
kaputt.
cliffs. So if a boat,
es
for
ist
example, a
genauso
ship is
mit
crashed
Gottes
against the
Feinden.
rocks, the cliffs,
Wir
it would
müssen
be
uns
destroyed.
nie Sorgen
It's the
darüber
same
machen, wie
thing
es Gott
with
geht,
God.
wenn
We don't
jemand Gott
ever have to
angreift.
worry about
Wir
God
müssen uns viel mehr Sorgen
whenever
machen,
someone
wie es
gets at
Gottes
God,
Feinde
and
geht,
whenever
wenn sie
someone
das
is
machen.
really going at him.
Gott ist und er
We never
bleibt
have to
stark
worry
für
because
uns.
he
Und wie dieser
stays,
Fels
he is and he
prallt
stays
einfach
strong
alles
for
ab,
us.
was uns angreifen kann.
And everything
Deswegen
also that
beschreibt
can
David
harm
auch
us
Gott
is
als ein
really
Schild.
being
Er steht vor uns
pushed
als ein
away,
Schild und alles
just
prallt
like the
ab,
waves
was uns angreift.
crashing against these cliffs.
Und das heißt natürlich
And he's
nicht,
there like a
dass wenn wir Gott
shield.
vertrauen, dass wir nie wieder
What this doesn't mean, of course, is that
Aber es
whenever we
heißt,
trust
wenn wir
God, we won't
Probleme
ever
haben,
have problems.
können wir immer zu Gott
But what it
rennen,
means is that
haben wir immer
as we
einen
have problems
sicheren
and when
Ort.
we have problems,
Und
we
das
can
ist
run
das,
to
was
God and we
David
will
uns
have a
auch
safe place
sagt
there.
in
And that's
diesem
what
Psalm.
David wants to share with us.
Und unsere Feinde sind natürlich etwas ein bisschen anders als
And of course, our enemies are a bit different, probably, than the enemies of David, because no one ever chased me through the desert, and I think the same is true for you, that you would never be chased through the desert. But I think we also have very real enemies that want to get at us, that want to scare us.
Wir haben zum Beispiel der Teufel und das Reich.
For example, the devil and the kingdom of darkness, that's a reality. And the devil wants to really catch us, and he wants to devour us, and he wants to really bring us down to destroy us. At the same time, we have our fears, and we are scared, and they are paralyzing us. Sometimes our history and the things that our past experience, they're really grabbing us. And in this corona times, we sometimes feel like everything is being shaken up. But no matter how much this world is being shaken, God stays the same and he remains strong. He tells us, I am strong as a rock. Concentrate on me, look at me, and hold on tightly. No matter what happens in your life, no matter what comes, I'm the same. I'm always reigning, and I'm still stronger.
Genauso wie Gott diese Zuflucht und dieser sichere Ort für David war.
The same way that Jesus and God
Und wir können mit David
was a safe
sagen,
place for
wie in
David,
diesem Psalm
he's the
sagt
same for us.
Wer ist denn Gott außer dem Herrn? Und
And in Psalm
wer könnte ein
18:32
Fels
it
sein,
says,
als allein unser Gott?
For who is God except the Lord? Who but our God is a solid rock?
God is the
only one in this world that we can really depend on and that we can really rely on. He's the only rock, He's the only God, and He never changes. And that's so different from our human
wir loben
nature.
konsequente Menschen und wir freuen uns, wenn unsere Kinder,
We like people that are consequent, and we like people, we like our partners to do the things that we say to them. But even reliable people, we can never depend on 100%. That's just our human nature. We are driven by our emotions. Sometimes we promise things and then we regret even having said these things. Sometimes we're just forgetting things. Sometimes we're hurt, emotionally hurt, and then we act out of these emotions. But with God, it's very different.
Ist einer meiner Lieblingsverse in der Bibel.
And one of my favorite passages in the Bible is written in Numbers 23:19, and that passage expresses so much how God is and how different He is.
Ist auch nicht wie einer von
God is not a man, so He does not lie. He is not human, so He does not change His mind. Has He ever spoken and failed to act? Has He ever promised and not carried it through?
God ist
God is totally different than us humans. He always does what He says.
Macht nie leere Versprechen.
He never gives empty promises, and as the prophet Isaiah puts it, His word never returns empty to Him. He has always full control over Himself. He never says something out of an emotional feeling. Whatever He says, He always acts according to it. And that's why we can rely 100% on His word. And at the end of the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus tells us that we can build our life on Him. In Matthew 24-27, He talks about the story of a wise person and a stupid person. And the wise person builds his house on a rock, and the stupid person builds his house on the sand. And after they are finished building their houses, a storm comes, and as we already know, probably the house on the sand, built on the sand, crashes, and the house on the rock stands firmly. And that's why Jesus is telling us, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Exactly as Jesus is a rock standing firm against the waves and the wind, He wants us to be the same way. He wants us to stand firm against the storms of life. But for us, that's only possible if we build our house on Jesus and on His Word, that we know what's written in the Bible, that we are really sure that this is, and persuaded that this is true. That we really think about and contemplate our lives. It's not just about us knowing what's written in the Bible, but also being convinced of the things that are written there, being convinced that the things are true, and because we're convinced, acting according to it. And at the same time, it means listening to God's voice when He personally speaks to us. Many times I experienced that God gave me a personal Bible verse, and that was always for certain times in my life. And I have that right now, actually. My wife and I, we moved to Dresden a few years ago. In the beginning, it was like the question, hey, what are we doing here? Was it really the right decision? And shortly after that, it started with Corona and the lockdown. But we knew God called us here, and God has a plan for this time, no matter the circumstances. And several years ago, God spoke to us and gave us a prophecy for a prophetic word for our family. And as we were moving here, another person had the exact same prophecy for our family, and he just expressed it with different words. And God told us, I want to use this time to make your family stronger, to really form you as a union. And that gives us a really clear goal, a really clear destiny. And we need this firm foundation. It's not always easy, but as we do that, we will see what God does in our family. We see how God puts things aside that we don't need anymore, and how He strengthens our family. And I'm so very grateful for this time, and I'm so very excited what God does. The other day I was remembering how things were a year and a half ago, and I can really, and how they are now, and I can really honestly say that God changed a lot of things. And all of that happening during Corona, where the world around us went into like a quiet mode. But God was still working in us, and He is still carrying us firmly. And I want to encourage you, if God spoke to you, do stand on the word that God spoke to you. The devil wants to prevent you from running to God, from looking for safety in Him. And that's why it's such a conscious decision. Sometimes, Lord, I need that, and I want to firmly stand on You as my rock. And if you're looking at this and thinking about this, and you come to the conclusion, hey, I don't have a rock, I don't feel there is a rock for me, then speak to God and be open to Him speaking to you personally via friends or through reading the Bible. And do trust that you will receive a word where you can say, yes, this is my word for this specific time. You can be sure that He will speak to you and act according to it, because He will never say anything that He will not act according to. And another passage that really encouraged me during this Corona time is in Psalms 73:26. This is written by the King Asaph, and he says, "My health may fail and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever." God wants to be the rock of our heart. He wants to give us an inner stability, an inner peace, that we know no matter what's happening, no matter what's happening with me, no matter what's going on in the world, I know that my heart is safe and secure in God. But the problem is that sometimes our hearts are full of wrong securities, wrong safety nets. We're looking for safety that we can control ourselves, that we're holding in our own hands, and that's actually something we inherited from our ancestors, from Adam actually. So in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, they believed the lie that God is holding something from them, that He's holding something back. And this lie is still planted in us, this sinful nature that is really not trusting God. We have that in us. So even if we know that God is the best choice, we often look for things that we can control ourselves. And you realize these things when you get into a time of need. And the question is, where are you running to in times of need? So whenever you're in a place where you're being threatened, where it's difficult, where do you run to? Maybe you try to distract yourself with YouTube videos or computer games, or you're working really hard, you're concentrating on your work and you try to find a way out, or you try to eat away the problems or drink away the problems. Or you're saying, well, you just sink into self-pity and hopelessness. But if we are honest, we know that these things can never really help us. But we try these things again and again because we want to control them ourselves. But then we always come back to the problem. Only God can be a strong foundation. And that's why He's telling us He wants to throw away these false controls, these false securities. And it's not because He is in such dire need for our trust in Him, but He knows that it is good for us trusting in Him. And at the same time, He also knows that we're not able to manage ourselves because it needs a change of heart, and only God can do that. But when we believe in Jesus Christ, He comes and He resides in our heart, and He renews our heart, and He makes it into a rock. The question is, how does He do it?
Dafür möchte ich ganz kurz Epheser 3 anschauen.
I want to look at Ephesians 3 there, and the prayer of Paul in Ephesians 3. It's such a great passage here in the Bible. I want to concentrate on one part, though, which is really in line with this message.
Und das ist Epheser 3, 16 bis 17.
And that's Ephesians 3, 16 and 17.
Reich ist an Macht und Herrlichkeit, gebe euch durch seinen Geist.
I pray that from His glorious, unlimited resources, He will empower you with inner strength through His Spirit. Then Christ will make His home in your hearts as you trust Him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And I just told you that as we believe in Christ, He comes and lives in us. He lives in our hearts. And the question is, why does Paul write to other Christians that he's praying for them that God would live in their hearts?
What
this is about is that he is praying for those hearts to really become the home of God. Just try to remember the situation. You have guests at home. I hope you can remember the situation that you have guests over. But when you have guests over, you often tell these people, hey, come, you go into the kitchen, get some coffee, and you tell the people in the living room, your guests, feel like home. But what would you do if you really have them feel like at home? What would you say if those people then went up, well, if I would really live here, I would definitely paint this wall red, and we really have to take off this picture and put it there. And then you come back with your coffee from the kitchen, and your favorite sofa is out on the street, and they took down the pictures. You would probably be very unhappy. But this is exactly how Jesus, what kind of home He wants to be for us. He tells us what to clean up.
Und das ist wirklich
And
nicht leicht.
that's really not easy. It's sometimes really hurtful to see what things there are in our hearts, what the things that we're holding on to. It's something like old furniture that we're really holding on to, that we really love, but that is really gross by now.
Aber Jesus kommt und entfernt diese falschen
But Jesus comes and He takes away those lies and those false securities, so that we can find our utter safety in Him, that we can really be rooted in His love. And the more He does that, the more stable we become. The less we are worried about the things happening around us as the world turns crazy. And the more His peace will fill our hearts. Jesus does that because He knows that without Him, without God as our foundation, we just have a shaky life.
Wir haben wirklich einen unglaublich starken,
We have
felsenfesten,
a really
guten Gott.
unshakable God.
Es gibt nichts und niemanden
He is a
in dieser
good
Welt,
God, and there's
mit dem wir
nothing
Gott
and no one in
auch
this world that we
ansatzweise vergleichen können.
can
Und
compare
weil
Him
der
to.
Fels ist, weil
Because
so stark
He is
ist,
the rock, and because He
können
is
wir
so
wirklich
strong,
zur Ruhe bei ihm kommen.
we can really
Wir können
rest in Him,
wirklich dieses
and we can
Gefühl
calm down
loslassen,
in Him, and
dass
we can
wir stark
let
genug
go of
sein
the feeling that we have to
Wir
be
können dieses
strong
Gefühl
enough.
loslassen,
We can let
ich
go
muss
of the
alles im
feeling
Griff
that
haben.
you have
Ich
to
muss
control
alles in
everything,
der Hand haben.
where you say,
Und dann
I
können
have
wir
to
wirklich
hold everything in my
ausschalten bei Gott
hands,
und zur Ruhe
and
kommen.
then we can really
Und das
rest
ist das,
in Him.
wo ich euch ermutigen
And this is
möchte,
what I want to
vielleicht eine
encourage you
neue
with,
Art von Gebet
to
auszuprobieren.
maybe try
Und
out
das ist das
a
Gebet der
new
Stille. Und ich
a new
meine
type of
wirklich,
prayer,
dass
and
ihr
that's the
ganz
prayer of
still
silence.
vor Gott
And what I
seid, dass ihr
mean by
Zeit
that
mit
is
Gott verbringt,
really
ohne
being
Gott etwas zu
completely
sagen,
quiet
ohne
with
ihm
God,
irgendwelche
not telling Him
Gebetsanliegen zu
anything,
geben.
not presenting Him with
Dass du
any
dich
of your
einfach auf Gott
requests,
konzentrierst,
but
dass
just
du auf
being
seine
still,
Stimme hörst und einfach
concentrating
seine
on Him,
Gegenwart genießt.
and just enjoying His presence.
Und ich habe das die letzten Wochen
And I
ein
did
bisschen
that
ausprobiert.
the
Und
last
ich muss
weeks,
ehrlich sagen,
and
es war wirklich schwer, das zu
And I
machen.
have to honestly
Ich glaube,
say
heutzutage
it was
vor
really
allem
hard for me to
hassen
do.
wir Stille. Wir
Because
hassen es, wenn
nowadays we
nichts
really
passiert.
hate silence.
Und
We
wir haben oft
hate
das
when
Gefühl,
nothing happens.
ich
And
muss etwas machen,
we often
um
have
in
the
die Gegenwart
feeling
Gottes
that
zu
we
kommen.
have to
Ich muss
do
Gott
something to come into
aktivieren,
God's
dass
presence.
mir
We have to
zuhört.
like activate
Aber
God
das
so
stimmt
that He will
eigentlich
listen
nicht.
to me.
Jesus
But
hat
that's actually
alles
not
schon
true.
getan.
Jesus did everything already, and we can come to him just the way we are.
Als ich das wirklich meine ganze Gefühle zur Seite schieben konnte und mich
when I was able to
hat es mir richtig
put away all of my feelings and to really rest in him, then this felt really good, and I really enjoyed just being in his presence, and just being with God. And I was able to look away from my things and to just look at him. And then this turned into a time of worship. And I can really feel with David, as he puts it in verse 18.
Sagt, ich liebe dich, Herr.
He says, I love you, Lord, you are my strength.
Und dieses Wort für Liebe,
and this word for love is really impulsive, it's emotional. He's so excited about God, he can't hold back.
Wow, was für ein Gott, ich liebe dich,
ich
bin so begeistert.
So amazed and says, wow, what a God. I hope that your heart, just as it was with David, and as I feel it, it is full of worship, that you say, wow, what a God, what a solid rock He is. And I want to encourage you, take conscious time, plan for it, and just worship Him for His attributes. That's real worship, to look at God and to worship Him for the God He is. I want to encourage you to take time and contemplate about what does it mean. What does it mean that God is our rock? God, you never change. You will always be the same. You're always strong. You were never weary. And it continues, it goes on and it goes on. And as we do that, we look away from our own problems, and they really become much smaller. It's the same way when you climb up a mountain, you look down on the things that were really big before, and then you see how small they are. When you concentrate on God, the whole instability of this world that can really scare us will be nothing compared to the stability of God. And now I maybe want to do something maybe uncommon, but I really want to give us a time of silence to really become quiet and still before Him and to concentrate on Him. And after that, we want to sing about God's faithfulness and His stability and worship Him.
Ja, für Jahr warst du stets bei uns. Du liebst uns so sehr, liebst uns so sehr. Ja, für Jahr bleibst du stets bei uns.